Bevan, welcome to the Profitability Playbook podcast. So today we have Bevan Lane. Bevan, just a quick intro from my side. Bevan is a dad, a husband, a Newcastle fan. I don't know if that's good or bad. He's a former football coach of the year, which I thought was very impressive. Cybersecurity expert and CEO of the InfoSec Advisory Group. Bevan, nice to have you.
Thank you so much. Awards and things are always interesting, right there. I've seen so many awards out there now, but, sometimes it can be really nice when you get the right sort of people and the right sort of awards, I think. No, I mean, thank you. I'm Bevan Lane. As Andrew said, we've known each other sort of. I was actually mentioning it to Fred about it. We've known each other without really knowing each other for a long period of time, but yeah, we've gone back to like the 90s, early 90s already, which is a good relationship. Cybersecurity is a field that even then I actually saw something at university and went, maybe I can do that for my life. So it explains how somehow I got into this field.
Yeah. I mean, Bevan, we knew each other like from, you at varsity from 91, right?
Yeah, from 90.
90. Okay, you were a year ahead of me. You were in the flat next to where I was.
Just say we're literally 4 rooms from each other.
That's right. It's crazy. Yeah, Bevan. So just think about finance in your life. So when do you think finance first became like significant in your life? Whether it was money or finance or numbers or accounting, when can you remember in your life when you can remember this is something I need to take note of?
Yeah, I think, I got it straight out of varsity. I went over to the UK and I arrived in the UK with barely enough money just to keep me going for the first 3 weeks. And I think that's your first shock in life is when you've, been given pocket money at university and you've got a lifestyle because you're happily middle class, so you never really have to worry about it. And you pitch up at this in England, and suddenly at that time it wasn't as bad. I think it was only 15 to the rand or whatever it was, and every rand that you spend is now 1/10 of what it's worth in South Africa. And I got a job working in a recruitment company where I had to phone up people to go to symposiums. And we were phoning CAs, which was quite interesting as well. People who were CAs who had now just recently qualified, and I needed to get them to this recruitment seminar, and we had to encourage them. And I was quite good at some of this, not so bad at others, but I was being paid per hour, and I had to pay rent, and then I had to get into London to pay this stuff. And it got so bad that after month 2, I remember doing the thing that I never thought I'd done. I went and looked for change in the sofa. I actually pulled the sofa backwards and looked for change. And you know what? I found about 15 pounds of change in the sofa. And it's a really good example, isn't it? Of like, wow. And that 15 pounds I could use over about 4 days. Just eating cleverly, using here, using there, and kept me going until I got my first payment. And I think I bought 1 beer in a can because I realized that I couldn't afford beer right now. I had to actually keep it going. While I was there, one of my friends offered me money, offered me a loan. He said to me, Bevan, I can help you out. And it's a friend that actually, that we were just talking about recently. And he offered me money. And I said to him, man, I don't want to take out a loan because it just puts so much more pressure on the situation that actually, I've got to survive on my own. Otherwise, if I took out a loan from you, I've got to pay it back. And that's going to put 10 times more pressure on me.
Yeah.
And I think that little part there set in line where I started thinking a lot more about money. Yeah. I go back to South Africa after a couple of months because actually I didn't make a success of it. And my heart really wasn't in it. I was like, I like being here, but I don't really want to be here to work. This is hard work. And I learned a lot of lessons there from not taking a loan, finding money, making money work for you. Came back to South Africa and started again with working from there.
And I mean, this is not a question I was going to ask, but I'm just thinking, somebody starting out in business that doesn't want to take that risk of taking out a loan, do you think that's a good thing or a bad thing? Because I mean, I know some people they get funding for their business and they start their businesses, and there's others like me. I mean, I started my business, I didn't take out any loans. It was sweat capital. And it's taken me, I think, a longer time to get my business up and running, and it's not even up and running properly, to get it going, than if I had put in money and got resources to help me.
Yeah, it's an impossible question to. It's definitely a depends type answer, isn't it? But I
Yeah.
do think you must understand what it means and what it can do to a company. And I've been talking to a friend of mine here in the UK, whose company took out a loan during COVID, and he had never taken out any debt in his 20 years in his company. And during COVID, he took out a loan. And what that loan almost did to the business, almost destroyed it when he had to spend 5 years paying it back. But when you read some of these great entrepreneurs who spent their entire life building their companies on debt and taking out intelligent debt, knowing how to manage and knowing that credit is so critical. The answer is what works best for you. And the problem is you don't know what works best for you until you're making that decision, haven't you?
Yeah, I suppose so. And it depends how big you want to go as well, I
Yeah.
guess. And whether that's a service industry or you selling something, I guess it also all depends. So Bevan, your business at the moment, I mean, tell us a story tell us a story about your business. Where did your business come from? Where's it going to? Where's it been? The success, the failures, and then somewhere in between there must have been a sort of like something that happened in your mind in terms of realizing how important it was to understand finance in running your business.
Yeah, I think a lot of businesses. So the first thing, a friend of mine, she sold her business for an amount that none of us can even comprehend. And she came and asked me for advice when she started her business. And one of the things I said to her was, income must come in quickly. And so I said to her, the way I did it is my business started because I had a contract in Asia or in Europe, in the center of Asia, working for a mine. And they paid me dollars tax free, allowed me to have cash. It's almost like taking out a loan, I suppose, even though I said I didn't have a loan. But now I actually had cash, I had capital. After I'd done that, when I arrived back in South Africa, I had two people I knew very well phone me up to say, can you help us? And there were two huge companies in Cape Town. So then I knew straight away I had income, I had annuity, I had money coming in, and so I could start a business. But I was lazy, tentative, didn't really hire anybody, did it all myself. And a lot of those, and only years later, then I started bringing in consultants who had experience to come help me. And over time, I could then have enough capital to go and hire staff. So I hired staff then. So you can see inherently, even though I'm an entrepreneur, I'm conservative, probably too conservative. I should have taken a lot more chances, but conservative, and I've got to feel comfortable that I've got enough there to pay for people. So that finance angle, exactly there. It's been there from day zero. It's always been, how much money do I have? How many people should I hire? What can I do? And then I actually had to get pushed by clients saying to me, dude, you're trying to do everything yourself. Build something, build capacity, bring in people. We can give you a lot more work, a lot more scope if you actually have people working for you. And I had two or three clients that helped me with that. They gave me opportunities, pushed, said, come. The cybersecurity specifically is such a shortage of staff, very hard for young people to get into the game. So they said to me, come help do this. So yes, accounting always was a thing for me. Finance is a critical aspect. How much do you have? How much are you spending? I am probably neurotic about going into debt, breaking my company because, I've got so much to pay off that the company can't survive. So I'm very careful on debit credit as being a fundamental concept.
Yeah. And I mean, you're not a massive company yet. And it's quite critical that you do that now. Although I do have a client that is like 20, 25 times your size, and they're killing it, right? They're absolutely killing it at the moment. But the owners are very conservative. They're not taking out any debt or any loan. They're doing really well, watching cash flow all the time. We're doing forward forecasting all the time in terms of cash flow, in terms of profitability, in terms of revenue, in terms of like targets versus revenue growth. It reminds me of our time at PwC in management consulting when we were building that business that for me was the biggest learning curve of my life, because I always introduced myself as an unconventional chartered accountant. But I mean, when we were doing that, I wasn't anything near a chartered accountant. I wasn't doing any debits or credits. It was pure management consulting, processes and things like that. And we were building businesses in those days as
Yeah.
well. So we've got a lot of experience. On your CV, you always put there, yes, about role and whatever at PwC, and then you see everybody else that wasn't there. Oh, built this business, built that business, built that business. But we were doing exactly the same thing, actually. So, Bevan, tell me, what do you think? What do you think of the mistakes that you've made in the past through your in your business while building your business?
Business is really so much about timing. So in many cases, I don't, like I said to you, I was too conservative, should have hired people, but I do think I hired people and ran a business when I felt comfortable, when it was time, when it was the right time. So I do think a lot of that isn't really a mistake because, customers and clients saying to me, yeah, you're good at this, but you could do so much more with people, is then they willing to give me the funds to do it, willing to let me go with it. So don't think necessarily that was what I have made a mistake is going in and hiring senior pros, professionals, people with lots of experience who I believed could support me and help me grow quicker and bring in and do what I do. I bring in customers, I build relationships, I maintain relationships. And I've done it once or twice. So I brought in a senior person who necessarily wasn't the right person. And that hurt the business, and in some cases actually negatively affected the business.
Yeah.
Other times, probably what I have done is not dealt with the opportunity as well as I wanted to, didn't get it, wasn't willing to, go down to the right cost or get to the right person. So, a lot of business would possibly have lost because of not actually taking the right strategy. I think it was probably a good way of doing it as well.
Yeah.
And also when I was one person, there were a lot of people who would have phoned me up to say, can you help? And I'm like, I can't. I can only be at one client at one time. If
Yeah.
I thought that through, I could have actually done more with that.
I mean, your industry, right? I chat to a lot of people that I come across. I chat to them about your business and how I think if I had to replay my life, I would want to get involved in cybersecurity. Although it's not something that I mean, technically I'm not competent with it at all. But I mean, you are really in the right place. You're really in the right place, and I think at the right time. I guess now the trick is to sort of like leverage the opportunity and get the right people on board to actually enable your business to leverage that opportunity. And I know what you're saying when you say you get somebody on board, it's a senior person, you have all these expectations of the person. They say they know A, B, C, D, E, F, X, Y, Z, and they can get the business in. And yeah. I've got clients that have gone through the same thing, and in the end, running strategic sessions for the client, and they've said, we need a business development / salesperson. And in the end, what we've done is we have recommended that they get people in that can replicate what they're doing operationally and client service wise, but for them, because they know their business the best, for them to remain that business development salesperson. What do you think about that?
Remember when you were at PwC and you mentioned it a couple of times, is that we were given everything to do. The
Yeah.
the client would contact you to ask you to do a proposal. You would do the proposal. You'd obviously get someone to review it, but you'd submit the proposal. You would do the delivery, and you'd project manage the whole project.
Yeah.
You do the invoice. You'd
Invoice.
follow up on the invoice. Yeah, it
Yeah.
it clearly was what they taught us in consultancy in those days, and it's probably why we were able to do what we do now, is because
Yeah.
we had to do everything from the beginning to the end.
Yeah.
So I do think, and that's why we can do this and inherently should always be involved in some way.
Yes.
And when you think about it, you and I are building brands which are partially based on our names, partially based on our experience. So the client actually wants to see you. I remember when we were talking about joining the Slacker network, and then Bobby Skinstead is like on LinkedIn, and you're like, oh, it'd be so cool to talk to Bobby Skinstead now because
Yeah,
he's famous. And
yeah,
there's all these things that you see and then if Bobby Skinstead doesn't talk to me and he sends me to his secretary to chat to me, I'm going to be offended because I wanted to meet him.
yeah,
And it's all
yeah.
the same with a lot of people on this network now, where you're talking to them. And so I feel the same if I'm not talking to a person running a company, a printing business,
Mm,
and they've heard my name, and then I send them to my sales lady, salesman to talk
mm.
to, it loses something.
It
And it
does.
definitely is that, isn't it?
It does, and it's quite interesting because talking about the Lekker network and the guys that are running the Lekker network, and they're very busy people, and Bobby Skinstad's, a busy person as well, and he's got people that help him with certain things, just like you and I've got people that help us with certain things. And when do you need to be you, and when can you replicate yourself? So I think it's for us to determine what are those things that we need to be authentic and original. So the original Bevan and the original Andrew, and where can we get people to assist those original individuals? I guess that's what it's all about. It's like being a partner at PwC or a partner at KPMG, I guess.
Yeah.
Same kind
Yeah,
of thing.
it's that brand against individual, isn't it, really? And I
Yeah.
think, yeah, at a PwC, no one, when Bevan moves on, that brand is still there. And in general, the company goes on quite simply because you've got another person there.
Yes,
In
yes.
companies such as ours, your brand is built largely from you. And how do you detach, and what's the balance between you and the brand? Always a question mark.
Yeah. So Bevan, in your business, I mean, what's next? What is the opportunity like in the cybersecurity business without giving away your trade secrets? What is it something that you would do again? Is it your passion?
I would do it again. You know what? I actually I had that discussion with a client about winning the lottery, and if you won the lottery and you suddenly had 10 million rand, 10
Yeah,
million pounds, um, what would I do? And I couldn't imagine not working. I'd want to do what I do with hopefully less of the stress of those sort of business stuff around. I'd be able to pivot into, and like I said to this lady that I told a story about who's sold a company for so much money, she's still heavily involved in
yeah,
cyber and really positively involved in it in such a way because she's giving back. So I would still do it. And I think that test is probably like I wouldn't go, I hate this, I don't want to do this more now. I've got 10 million pounds. I would
yeah,
definitely want to do it. I would possibly have tried to use what I'd learned about the failures and jump in quick in certain opportunities,
mm,
and adjust. It's changing constantly. Artificial intelligence, everyone's talking about it, is always there as something and is going to constantly change it. The
mm,
big vendors are taking over a large part of the market in many ways. Big cloud operators and stuff, they come in, they try and integrate everything into their tool, into their
mm,
technologies.
mm,
So you've got to be willing to understand how that is adjusting and not try and stay with these tried, tested ways of doing stuff, spreadsheets, and
yeah,
I'm going to be for 3 years on a contract because you need me. It's now showing the efficiencies, working with the technologies,
mm.
and being innovative is constantly in our way we're working.
And if you had to, because in my business, I always think if I had a business partner, things would be different. Have you ever thought of that? Because I mean, you're on your own.
Yeah. No, it's also a really good point. I've got the two friends of mine also sold their company, and they're two partners who one is very technical and the other one is a good sales guy, and it puts them into boxes. But largely, it is largely how they've worked together for 20 years, and I'll watch them, and then when you have individual chats to them and you hear about behind the scenes. We really get on well, but this and that and this, you hear a couple of stories, but in general, you see that theirs is a really good example of positive in terms of working together, going through that whole journey. I've heard so many stories of the opposite, of very negative ones where it hasn't worked out. There's a guy in the UK I've been speaking to who he had trying to find a way to get rid of his co-founder,
Mm.
and they started the company together. And then he just says, just what am I going to do now? How do you get rid of this co-founder?
Yeah,
It's incredibly difficult.
yeah,
So Yeah, I do. I wish I had, but I just didn't find the person. Lucky enough
Yeah.
to find the right wife, but not the right partner.
Yeah, I'm also, I go backwards and forwards between I need a partner and I just need help. I need somebody to help me. And also I don't know what that is yet because I'm also, I won't say winging my way through this thing, but I mean, I'm doing a bunch of stuff, right? I'm doing a lot of training. I'm helping a couple of guys out with their, strategic finances. Um, and then I'm also doing my day job, which is at the moment still my side hustle. Hopefully soon not to be my side hustle.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's difficult, right? It's difficult, but it's also I love it. I absolutely love it
Yeah,
because
yeah.
it's doing different
I'm
stuff.
smiling, eh?
Yeah, it's doing different things, and there's opportunities, more and more opportunities coming out of the woodwork, all the time. And yeah, with LinkedIn's helped a lot, and the let's hope the Lekker network also. I think it's going to be what you make of it at the end of the day. Just
Yeah.
like any chamber of business, I guess. Um, yeah. Bevan, in closing, right? So just trying to think of a question I can ask you just at the end. Um, what if you were giving advice to somebody starting out in the cybersecurity business today? What advice would you give them?
Yeah, it's a very there's so many people in this industry, and that's what you said, it's timing and stuff. And we did spend 10 years, 15 years when I was at PwC, when I was by myself, going to clients and trying to explain the risk, trying to quantify the risk, and literally being laughed at, literally being, yeah, you know what, there's no risk. We're never going to get hacked. Now everybody knows that they're going to
Yeah,
get that they've all been hacked multiple
yeah,
times. So if you were coming into the thing, you know, the scare tactics are really largely gone. Everyone knows they're all scared. So you need to be able to find an angle where you can really help, where you actually are showing them, okay, we know that you've got problems, but let me give you a solution to your problem, which actually is done in a way that you'll see the benefit of it. And
yeah,
we talk a lot about aligning what you're doing to the business objectives, aligning what you're doing, understanding that this company is selling screwdrivers and their cyber risk is completely different to a bank. And how do
yeah,
you actually apply that? How do you align that? So
sure.
for me, that's it. Coming in, talking to them without fear. This is how we can help you. We know this is a real issue. We can make it easier for you. And that's largely what we're trying to do as well.
Sure. No, cool. Thanks, Bevan.